Good morning, everyone. Let's start with our daily market commentary. Now, what we see is basically Nifty weekly chart, and as we had decided prior as well, the levels are very important and it is trying to be within that range. So the top level was basically 10,750 around, and on the bottom, the low which was made in the previous week was roughly around 10,000, 11,250. So the range still remains precise within that zone, and most important is to go inside the day and see whether things have changed or not. So one thing is there, the week which is starting is with the red, and there is a clean downside which is still visible. So roughly market can reach towards this zone towards the expiry. Now going down inside the day, whether the same things can be seen in the day as well or not. So what I see in the day, after this gap up bearish complete red Moribazu, it tried to test the same high, right? So one was over here and then it came back here and the good selling comes by. Now because of the good announcements which were supposed to be over the weekend, but that nothing came through. But the point here was the market had a good run up prior itself. So on the Friday closing it went up, anticipating good up move, but what happened now today, straight away opening gap down. The most important point which we understood on the daily chart from the last commentary was 11,600 or 580 is the zone on the upside. So if the markets now keep going up, the agenda is first it has to cross the most important barrier, which is around this 580 mark. The second part, which was also understood, now this 11,250 kind of range becomes paramount importance because it is weekly support plus it is also coming through the daily support. So this basically shows there are two levels where weekly and daily is matching, plus there is some OI built up which is also happening at the same juncture. This was gap up opening and now it is trying to bridge the gap. So almost on the daily today we can see Nifty towards 376, right? So from the top it became gap up bearish and there is clean downside to fill the gap towards 376 or so. So from the higher side you have more 20, 30 points, 40 points remaining on the downside before it takes support or it bounces back. The most important thing to understand what's happening on the structure. So when I'm trying to see the structure, it is very clear the kind of first bounce basically started on this end. So let's annotate this just to understand how Nifty can behave over next 2 months. So if you go out and try to understand the simple flow of the downturn which happened. So this was the downturn which we saw, and the importance was the downturn was roughly around 500 points. So it completes its monthly ATR to 600 to 500 points. Now it is trying to basically do the bounce, which is the first bounce which is trying towards 580 or so. Now the second point which is important after this, if it again comes down, this is what we are trying to see on weekly side. It basically forms a double bottom formation, right? So towards the expiry it needs to end around these zones, and then you have the October month starting. Now in the October month, since results are expected to be good, there is a straight upside target on Nifty towards 11,750 zone. So what we are seeing over here, 11,300, 350 zone can reach towards 11,750 kind of zone, right? So these 6-7 days towards the expiry, you can see a good downfall, but this base has to be supportive because it is weekly and daily support, 250 kind of range, and then we can see a good bounce back which is happening on the higher end. So the target for Nifty maybe for the October month, if this base at the bottom is basically not taken out. So if this base is not taken out, this base, then this is pretty much clear. Then you will see a target of 11,750 in the month of October. So this is one good thing that we are getting, that yes, after this bounce, there is a kind of second bounce which is also happening around this range in the month of October, right? So this can bring us target towards 11,750. Now obviously we need to see the structure, whether the S&P is also following the same or not, a sideways zone or no. So that is also equally important. Now this is what we see on the Nifty formation. Let's go and see Bank Nifty is trying to be supportive or not. Now Bank Nifty will be under pressure because of the interest rate rising scenario and those kind of stuff. But most important thing to understand, on the bank nifty as well. So what we had discussed, this is the weekly chart. It started its game around this 26,600 zone, went almost high, consolidated at the higher levels, and we saw a good downfall coming by. So bank nifty seems to be same as nifty. What we see over here, a good downfall, another downfall, but when we see from the top, 28,200 coming towards 26,600. So more or less you have 1,200 to 1,400 kind of fall, which also exhausts the monthly ATR. So that is what we were trying to say last time. It will consolidate now on. So what we are trying to see now, it is opening gap down, trying to go down. So the most important level for bank nifty is around this 26,500 to 600 zone. So this is the good amount of support for bank nifty. It should take support around this zone. It might even go down like a spike and then come back up. The most important point to understand, the good fall has happened. The same way you can see the upside in bank nifty almost towards 28,200. Now that is only possible if this level is being taken out. So the first hurdle for bank nifty on the upside has to be around 27,400, and if these levels are taken out, then you can see straight target of 28,200. So there will be no stopping after this, because as we see the fall was fast. Now it tried to sustain over here. Once it is taken out, you can see a good rise almost towards 28,200. Right? So keeping that in mind, things are yet in that consolidation mode. The most important on the weekly front, what we see, this was the prior resistance as well. It is now becoming the support, but that was breached. Hence it now becomes your resistance. So the support now gets breached and it becomes future resistance. That is one important thing that we got from the weekly structure. The second point, multiple time he took support around this zone. And the last week also the low was made around this zone and it basically clinged upside. So that is pretty much clear. After 3 weeks of downside, it might then take some pause or rest, and then you can see an uptrend coming in the month of October. Now we need to also be very precise, as we were saying on nifty. Even for bank nifty, this is the level or zone which it should not break. So around 26,700 to around 400 kind of zone, where it can go down, make a spike, but it has to return back above this. So we are bullish in bank nifty in the month of October, provided that two things happen. It has to go down, okay, do time pass around this zone, then it has to go and sustain above this. So in the month of October, we also have RBI meeting and Fed meeting towards the end of September. So we need to be pretty sure there will be some amount of volatility in bank nifty, right? So let him come sustain above this 26,700 mark. It will straight away go towards 27,400. Once this is breached, it will go straight away towards 28,200. So the clarity is very much there for bank nifty, okay? But all we need to see the events getting passed out and the same levels have been sustained or not. When we see even on the daily side, are we getting the same outlook or no? It is pretty much same. So this was the base which was formed multiple times, came back in the same zone, and this is where multiple resistance took place. So two things are pretty much clear. After the fall, multiple resistance took place around this zone, came down all the way, bounced back, again kind of forming a double bottom over here. It should consolidate. One thing is pretty clear, it has to go beyond this level to reach 28,200, right? So things are pretty much now clear. The levels of support are very much known, and we need to see how it behaves around those zones. So that was bank nifty. Now let's pull out some of the stocks and how is it going on terms of gainer and loser. Right. So what I see over here from the gainer and loser side, one thing is pretty much clear. When we see the gainer loser, now the dollar will basically not be going on the strength to strength. So when I'm seeing loser side, we all have Titan, HDFC, Bajaj Finance, SBI. So majorly two kind of stocks are in the loser category. One is the consumption based stocks. So HUL is out there, Bajaj Finance, financing consumers, Titan. All these are stocks which are on the consumption side, because if interest rate goes up, these are under the hammer. The second, you have only one bank over here, and that is SBI, and HDFC being the housing finance loan. So what we are seeing over here, all the finance companies will be under pressure, the FMCG companies will be under pressure, and that can be clearly seen because of being in the loser side. Now what I see on the gainer side, still the IT pack is performing, right? But now there are two important things to understand. There is no TCS over here, there is no Infosys over here. Now we are seeing Wipro, Tech Mahindra, HCL performing. right? So that basically means the performance is not huge, but what we see, it might now start going sideways. And if dollar gives away some of this strength, then you can see a good fall in these IT. Now, the pharma, both are striding higher, Sun Pharma, Dr. Reddy and Lupin. So both the pharma and the IT pack are the only guys who are trying to provide support to Nifty. So that's pretty much clear, and little bit of OMC which keeps going up and down. When I see on the losing side, I get a clear agenda over here. If you see over here, HDFC Finance Company, Bajaj Finance, SBI, India Bull, then you have Bajaj Finserv, Yes Bank, HDFC Bank. So this is pretty much clear. All the finance companies are on the losing stride. And more than that, HUL and Titan, the consumer side, is also on the losing side. So the effect of interest rate or rise in interest rate is basically providing some kind of downside for these stocks. Now, two big events you need to understand. End of the month, you have Fed. Almost towards the start of October, on around 5th or 7th, we have RBI meeting also. So two meetings lined up back to back, both from interest rate perspective, right? So this is why, and the 10-year government yields in India have gone up, and that is why you're seeing a good slide in these banking and consumer stocks. Now let's take some of the stocks, whether we can find some kind of output in these zones or not. So trying to see the non-finance stocks first. Now if you see over here is Reliance. Now what we have seen on Reliance, it has been going higher, then it consolidated at the upper level. Now what we see after the good stride on the upside, it has consolidated for 4 days, 4 weeks, 1, 2, 3 and 4, right? And it is consolidated always on the higher side. So it's not been going about 1278 kind of zone, and you can see the week is starting red. It can go straight towards 1206. If you want further selling, it has to go below 1206 to come towards 1170 or so. So there is a clear downside shift on Reliance after consolidating at the higher level. Now these kind of structures are pretty much similar because we saw this in Bank Nifty as well. On the weekly front, they are consolidating at higher levels and now starting a bit lower. So that's Reliance. And then if we say L&T, which is the construction side, so they are trying to go for non-finance stocks. So if you try to see, Reliance is a little bit lower, but on the buyback news, L&T is on the stronger foothold, right? So it has been consolidating up and down, and more or less the downside is not there for L&T. Now let's take some of the other stocks which are banking. So HDFC Bank, which has been weak, and if you see continuously after testing the new highs, it has been going down, right? But the strength of downward movement is very less. So the momentum is drying out for HDFC as the bigger bank. So we can see the Bank Nifty can basically get some kind of support. On the last, we see multiple support was taken around these zones. So it is trying to inch in that zone or area where it can find good support. But the momentum is going out. So that's good for Bank Nifty. The other heavyweight, ICICI Bank. So it's been going high. But the most important point again, 1, 2, 3, 4 to 5 candles making the same highs. When you see 4 to 5 candles after a good stride on the upside, making the same highs, what we see over here, again it is trying to inch on the downside. So one thing is pretty much clear, after a good slide we can see straight away gap down. Okay, try to breach, again it is trying to be on the downside. So ICICI Bank has a target of roughly around 308. So there is a good downside momentum for ICICI. Now because of this downside, it is very much clear that it can provide some pressure on Bank Nifty. So we need to understand whether the other banks are also performing the same way or not. So HDFC losing out momentum, ICICI on the downside. Now let's see Axis Bank and Yes Bank. Now even on Axis Bank, what has happened? The stride has been on the higher side. It basically goes down. It basically forms a gunshot pattern, opens straight away down. So this is on the weekly side, opening sideways or down. So that clearly shows there is no big upside even for Axis Bank. Now the important point to take away from these are the downside is open. So ICICI and Axis Bank, you can see a good downside because all the news is over. The new MD has come, everything has happened. So after this downside of today's low, you can see Axis Bank also inching towards 605 or so. So two banks can become more weak, right? So Axis and ICICI are the two guys. Now let's see, Yes Bank, Kotak Bank already have corrected a lot, right? So you cannot see them also striding down. So what we see on Yes Bank, it's been falling down, but it might now take support around these zones. That is pretty much clear. Yes Bank is again out. Then we can take Kotak Bank, which has also corrected a lot. So what I see on Kotak Bank, after the fall, it's been forming the same highs around this zone, coming back down, trying to inch high and going down. So you can get some kind of downside for Kotak Bank. So the two banks which we need to look for Bank Nifty on the downside is Axis and ICICI. Right, so two banks are pretty much clearly giving us the indication. Now let's take the other finance company. So this is the Bajaj Finance. So what we see after a good ride on the upside, it was losing momentum over here, then it started going down. Now if it remains below these levels, so below the levels of roughly around 2670, there is pretty much clear that it can come towards 2404. Right, so roughly around 300-200 points downside is there for Bajaj Finance type of stock as well. So after the ride, it came down, tried to go down, buying came in, but now today we see it opened straight away below the most important crucial level, which is around 2670. So if it sustains below 2670, then you can see a clear downside towards this 2368 kind of zone. So that is again weak. Now let's take Hindustan Unilever and ITC. So the two FMCG giants, what we see on Hindustan Unilever, it has already given a good downside. Then it basically went below the important mark. It tried to test and then it is again going down. So more or less the bigger downside is over, and you can find now few candles going down, which cannot be much bigger, but yes, it can provide some pressure on Nifty. Going out for India Bulls or ITC first for the FMCG. Now what I see on ITC. Okay, now the problem here, what we are trying to see is again ITC has zoomed up, then you are getting an engulfing pattern at the top, then it is a gunshot pattern trying to go higher and trying to remain high, but what we see today. So same like Bajaj Finance and other structures, if ITC does not go on the weekly basis above 305, 306, the downside is open at least till 295, right? So that can again provide pressure to Nifty. So then clearly there is an agenda over here where the non-IT stocks or non-finance stocks are also weak. So specifically FMCG stocks, right? Then you have Reliance, which might also become weak, ITC, which is also becoming weak. In the bank, we have ICICI and Axis. Now coming out and seeing the two IT guys. Agreed that dollar has remained strong, and you can see a stupendous rally which has happened. Now in Infosys kind of stock, the results are not good, number one. Number two, bonus is also out of the way. And number three, it is now consolidating at the higher levels. So once it starts consolidating, two candles on the top, right? More couple of candles at the top in this zone, and you can see a good downside in Infosys. So it has to cross 720 and straight away towards 690 is possible within a day itself, right? Because if the dollar basically spikes back towards 69 odd levels, you can see straight fall which will happen. Now falls will not happen in TCS because of stronger earnings or Tech Mahindra. You can basically see good downside in Infosys. You can also see in Wipro and those kind of things. So let's see whether TCS is showing some strength. No, it's also going in the sideways zone. But I'm not yet bearish on TCS, but would be bearish on Infosys. So here also it is trying to go on the side range, because here yet the buyback thing is yet left. So once that is out of the way, then it can also become weak. But the downside is not much for TCS. So coming out to see the other guys, which is Wipro and HCL. Both are the weak guys, but what I see on the Wipro, complete downside, trying to make a base and zoomed up because of one good order that they have got, right? And that is why a good rally took place. And all we see over here is the most important level, 323. It is trying to sustain on the higher side. Now, if it keeps zooming higher, obviously, when the fall will also be fast. But for our agenda, one thing is pretty much clear. The first support comes around 323. And if that is taken out, you can see straight towards 306. So let him consolidate at the higher levels. And once these levels are taken out, then only you can see on the downside. Now, the earnings have not been good on a good track for Wipro, right? So that's where we are trying to be a little bearish on Wipro. Now, even HCL disappointed on earnings. But what we see even after this disappointment, kind of double bottom over here, trying to sustain and rise on the higher side. So Wipro and HCL both are almost at its 52-week high, right? And both the stocks have not yet given good earnings over here. So again, what I see on HCL, it is again clear, trying to form higher side consolidation. $1 spike on the downside, you can see straight downside towards HCL. So HCL and Infosys are trying to consolidate at the higher levels, right? So that's the takeaway from IT. Now last, let's look at the pharma stocks. They have been roaring, they have been going high. What we see on the pharma stocks, again, things are pretty much clear over here. They are strengthening, and if you see a good base is being formed now, zoomed up, came back down, the lower lows which are made is not being breached, right? So it is trying to get good support over here. But what has happened on this weekly side? The candles are turning weak, right? So the momentum is drying out. Then you can see consolidation at the higher levels over here and a good spike towards 890 or so. So once the spike will come before the month of October, right? So you will get one spike almost down of Lupin as well towards these range. And that will be a good buying range for Lupin, around 900 to 920 range if it comes down. And then the October month starts, you can basically look out Lupin because it has been in a good upward structure. Even the Dr. Reddy and Sun Pharma both are seeming to be strong, but we need to look out if it will correct or not. So what we see on Dr. Reddy also, it is at the top, right, almost at the upper side to cling towards 2800 or so. Right, and it has been a good stride on the upside. It might consolidate, might spike down, but again you can see by October at least these range 2800 getting hit, right? So it might not go straight away all the way now, Lupin and Dr. Reddy, but two of them are a good structurally upward trend is there, plus we are just waiting for a spike on the downside, and we can look out for these stocks in the month of October. Coming down to Sun, there were some kind of observations of FDA and those kind of things. FDA issues were there, but one thing is again clear. If you see back to back, it has crossed the most important resistance. So it zoomed all the way up, tried to sustain over here, and multiple time it took support over here and trying to cling on the higher side. Now the most important point to understand, on the upper target of 720 towards 740 kind of zone is quite visible for Sun Pharma as well. So out of all, I would say Dr. Reddy is my first choice. Then it will be Lupin, and then third it will be Sun Pharma. Now a lot of people would be stuck around this lower level. Why? Because that was the bad news which came in. Everybody went short, and just see what happened. It just tried on the higher side. So there is no downside in Sun Pharma, at least for this expiry. It might come towards 617 or so, or 640 kind of zone. But the most important is the upside target for Sun Pharma will be in the month of October towards 740 or so. So pharma, both, all you can see, the Dr. Pharma, Dr. Reddy or Lupin or Sun are now turning out to be positive, right? After a good slide on the downside, we are seeing them consolidate at the lower levels, kind of double bottom over here, and then it is trying to sustain above the neckline, right? So this basically shows that a good upside targets can be on its way in terms of pharma. So what we see even on Sun Pharma, around this 1200 to 1100 zone, it had corrected almost towards 500 zone. So 50-60% downside is more than enough for a good quality stocks, right? And that is the correction. The bottom got formed, and this is the only point to enter pharma, right? So this is very much clear on basis of Sun, Lupin, and Dr. Reddy. All you can see have corrected by 50-60% and now striding higher, right? So the next round of rally can come from pharma side. And the the USD INR is also trying to basically provide support in their way. Now let's take Maruti. So only from the auto segment seems to be very strong on the higher side, and what we see over here. Suddenly it is trying to lose its momentum, right? But obviously before the big earning season coming up, it can see a good slide on the downside. So what I see on the downside is more or less towards 1800 or 8,200 kind of zone can be reached. But the most important over here, what we have seen, it has come down, consolidated and zoomed. It has come down, consolidated and zoomed. It is coming down again and might consolidate and zoom. So the upper target for Maruti, only if it sustains above 8725 level, you can see Maruti clinging towards 9,400 or so. Right, so this can be a good upside target which will happen in the month of October. But before that, we have monthly numbers which are coming out of Maruti. So towards the end of the month, you will have the sale numbers coming out, and we might see if the sales are not good, it can go towards 8,200 or so. But consolidating at these level, you can see a good upside in Maruti only after 8,700. So this is a good zone which we can see, and you can see a gunshot over here, gunshot over here, and then it is trying to show a buying is there at the lower levels. But obviously, if the numbers do not come out, it might come towards 8,200, consolidate over here, and then you can see an upside. But on the Maruti front, it is clearly visible only after 8,700. But if it sustains above this 8,700, straight one-day target will be towards 9,085 in one day itself, because the fall was fast, the rise will be faster, and after this, it can go towards 9,400. So it can be a good risk-reward opportunity in Maruti, but rather than just getting into the trade right at now, I think we should wait out just to see auto numbers, how they pan out, whether it goes down or not, and if it sustains within this zone, then we are looking out for target of 9,400. So more or less all the good stocks are taken out. Nifty seems to be in that consolidation mode. ITC Reliance can be one of the make or break situation, and in the bank we are very much clear Axis and ICICI, right? So they have to play the role. So that's it for today's commentary. We'll join in again tomorrow. Thank you for joining.